$2,000? Are you nuts? You do know that's twice the price of the gun, right? Yes, yes, yes. That's probably what you're asking yourselves. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Leupold Mark 5 HD 5-25, why we're using it as the primary scope in the series, and why it's working. As you've been seeing in the previous few videos, I've been shooting rifles with this Leupold optic. If you've been shooting for any period of time, you've likely heard of Leupold. Leupold makes some truly terrific products, including binoculars, rangefinders, and rifle scopes. The company is well known for their high-end hunting and tactical rifle scopes and is up there with the likes of Nightforce, Schmidt & Bender, and US Optics, particularly as it relates to higher-end optics. As it relates to the series, I wanted to make sure that we can test the guns for what they are and for there not to be excuses. As such, this is why we're using the Leupold Mark 5 HD, using Hornady match grade ammo and shooting guns off of the Caldwell Duroc bench rest. Where the scope really shines is shooting in extremes. The extremes would be poor lighting conditions or at long distances. Just like driving to point A to point B, you can do it in most any vehicle. A $200 scope will let you shoot and hit 1,000 yards, much like this Leupold will, but the difference is you're going to have a better experience with this optic. After shooting and hitting with the scope at distances past 2,000 yards, there should be very few excuses at closer distances. So, if you're not familiar with this optic already, let's take a look at the interview that I did with a Leupold representative on the scope, starting with some background about the company and where the 5 HD fits. I apologize in advance for the wind noise, as I did not have good audio equipment with me at the time.
For those people who might not be familiar with the wide variety of products that Leupold puts out, can you talk about where this scope fits into the bigger Leupold rifle scope line?
Yeah, so our entire rifle scope family, we're most known for our hunting rifle scopes, and then we've worked with the military a lot over the years. So the company's actually a 112-year-old company this year, so we've been making optics for a long time. Currently focusing on sporting optics. So we do make hunting rifle scopes, we make binoculars, rangefinders, spotting scopes. The Mark 5 is in our what we call our tactical line, so it is geared more towards a competition shooter or military user, professional user like the police. But because of the versatility of the scope, the lightweight, and the capabilities that the scope packs into it, it's also a great crossover for someone who's going to use the scope for a hunting / competition rifle. You know, somebody who only has one rifle and wants the best of both worlds. Alright, so kind of starting from the front and working our way back, the heart of the Mark 5 family of scopes is our Twilight Max HD lens system. And what that does is the HD lenses, the extra low dispersion lenses, obviously give you excellent clarity, resolution, and contrast. So you're able to see fine detail and pick out targets anywhere from less than 100 yards all the way out to the 2,500 yards we were shooting this week. Also, what we do with the Twilight Max is we manage the blue and violet light waves, which are most predominant in low light, and that really is going to give you extra time behind the scope in the dawn and dusk. That's more important for maybe a hunter or if you're out shooting a match where you're out early in the morning or light starting to fade, that'll really help you be able to find those targets later than some of our competitors. All of the rifle scopes in the Mark V family feature a 35mm main tube, and what that does, it allows us to get a lot more elevation travel out of the scope, and that's important. As you saw, trying to get out to those extreme distances we were shooting today, you're able to dial that scope up from 100 yard zero all the way out to, some of us were making hits at 2,000 to 2,300 yards, even being able to shoot at targets out at 2,500 yards, which is, we're talking well over 1.5 miles at that point.
As was mentioned, the scope has a 35mm main tube. Generally, the bigger the tube, the more adjustment range you have within the scope. As such, a 35mm tube will give you far more adjustment than your typical 30mm, and more than the 1-inch tubes you'll find in many lower-end scopes. This is critically important in two cases. First, the further out you shoot, the more internal adjustment you need if you plan on clicking in the dope, and the more room you have to play with, the more you have to use before you have to start using holdovers. This lets you shoot further. The second case where it's important is if you're shooting less efficient calibers and projectiles that start losing velocity and start dropping like rocks. For instance, shooting a 168-308 boat tail at 1,200 yards will drop around 15 mils, while a 225 grain ELD projectile out of a 300 PRC, such as the gun that we've been shooting, the Ruger, that's going to drop only 9 mils at that same distance. At 1,500 yards, that's 23 mils for the 308 versus 13 mils for the 300 PRC. To put it into perspective, the Sightmark Citadel scope that we just looked at only has 17 mils of total elevation adjustment in its 30mm tube. One of my favorite low and mid-range optics is the Nikon Monarch 6-24, and that only has 8.9 mils of internal adjustment. So that's why many of the rifles are going to come with 20 MOA rails, which will give you about 6 mils or so in elevation that you can play with. With the Leupold and a built-in 20 MOA rail, we're able to hit at 2,000 yards without holding over, and we only had to start using Kentucky windage at 2,300 yards.
Going into the adjustments, this particular scope features millirating adjustments or 1/10 mil per click adjustments. On the 5-25, you're going to get a little over 35 mils of travel. And the way we make sure that the shooter's able to manipulate and understand where they are is as you turn these adjustments, they lock at 0, right? So you don't have to worry about inadvertently bumping it. As you dial up in your range, the little lock button, when you get into your second turn, is going to go flush. So you have a visual and tactile indicator of what revolution you're on. You now know you need to use your second set of numbers. If you go into your third turn, that button actually recesses into the scope and this little silver tab comes up. So again, you have a visual and a tactile reference that now I'm in my third turn, I use my third set of numbers. The great thing about that is when you want to come back down to your 0 after you're done shooting, you just spin it down and it locks right in at 0. If for some reason you need to make a slight shift, you can go a 0.5 mil below 0. Again, try to make the controls as easy to use as possible. Have a fairly wide parallax or side focus adjustment. It makes it nice and easy to get a hold of, and the extra diameter, the extra size really gives you some capability to fine-tune the focus on the scope to make sure you've got a nice crisp image and get all the parallax out when you're making those shots at extreme distances. As we kind of touched on earlier, very, very smooth power selector, so you can move from your 5 power all the way up to 25. And we included a little throw lever on there. Now that helps give you some leverage. It's a little easier to get a hold of when you're in a rush. If you're someone who prefers to run that without the lever sticking up to get a little more clearance, you can remove that lever. It comes right out. The scope's completely waterproof, fog-proof without it. We also have a fast focus eyepiece on the end, and that's going to allow you to quickly focus the reticle for your individual eye, and if you have multiple people using the scope, then it's easy for them to make those adjustments very quickly. As you can tell, it goes great on the Ruger RPR. So you're looking at a combination like this. You have a scope that's very easy to use, very intuitive if you're a first-time user or new user, but also has all the features that a high-end user, a competitor, or a professional shooter needs. and matches up perfectly. If you're looking for a package that's very affordable, you can buy right off the shelf. You can buy the Ruger RPR, you can throw the Mark V on top of there. We're using Hornady match ammo out here, again off the shelf, and able to put the bullets where you need them to go, out to any distance you're capable of shooting.
If there's a way to summarize the scope, it's the following. With the Leupold Mark V, you're getting great glass. The glass is going to let you shoot longer and see more clearly. The scope tracks properly and it does what it's supposed to. When you make your adjustments, you should have full confidence that there's going to be minimal, if any, tracking error at long distances. Lastly, the scope is going to let you work with it without giving you a hard time. This means you're getting precise adjustments with both audible and tactile clicks, and it also means you're able to manipulate the elevation, the windage, and the parallax without having to take your head out of position. All of this is why many shooters choose to spend as much, if not more, on the optic than they do on the gun. With many scopes, you can get specs and decent quality glass at a low price, but as we've seen most recently with the Sightmark, it's going to feel like you're fighting the scope in order to manipulate it. On the flip side, I really love my Nikon, but while it's a joy to work with and it has really good quality glass, the smaller tube is just not going to let me have enough internal adjustment to shoot long distances.
So the Mark V, if we're talking about a competition style scope or long range precision shooting scope, all the Mark Vs are a front focal plane rifle scope. And what that means is, as we're bending the light through the scope, the placement of the reticle is either in the first focal plane or the second focal plane of the rifle scope. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both. On the front focal plane rifle scope, because the reticle is in front of the lenses that do the magnification in the scope, that reticle subtension is going to grow and shrink at the same rate as the magnification change. Why that's important is because the reticles that are in this scope have features in there to allow you to hold over or left and right for wind drift. Now, because it changes at the same rate as the magnification, those holdovers will always represent the same amount of distance or coverage on the target, no matter what magnification you're on. Again, for a competition or law enforcement shooter. Now, a scope with a second focal plane rifle scope, reticle, those are going to be geared better towards a hunting scope, where someone needs to make sure that that reticle is always very visible, very easy to see, no matter what the lighting conditions are, no matter what the distance of the animal or the target is. Because that reticle stays the same size all the time, it's going to be easier to see on the very low magnifications and easy to pick up.
While it's totally a personal preference, having experience with both, for target scopes, my preference is a front focal plane optic. As was mentioned, with many of the new innovative reticles, a front focal plane optic will let the shooter use the reticle more effectively. And it's going to apply for both sighting in and range finding. For instance, if your shot missed by 2 mils, either hold over or just adjust by 2 mils. The magnification at which you're at does not matter. At the same time, if you know roundabout size of the targets you're shooting at, you can estimate the distance using the known information from the reticle, no matter the magnification. So, why Leupold?
Reasons to consider Leupold over others. We're definitely known for our durability and our reliability. The company's been in business for 119 years in Oregon the entire time, so we have longevity. We have a history of performance. We guarantee our rifle scopes for life, so guaranteed for life on craftsmanship, the materials that we use, the performance of the optic. So if you ever have a problem with it, if your children have a problem with it, or your children's children have a problem with it, the scope's going to be covered under our lifetime guarantee. Also made in the USA. Our factory's in Beaverton, Oregon, and we employ 700 craftsmen there building these rifle scopes. Everything that gets mounted on top of a firearm has to come out of our factory. And again, going back to the warranty, a lot of people claim that they have a lifetime warranty or lifetime guarantee. A lot of times that just means giving you something to replace the one that's broken. With us, we're really guaranteeing performance. We're doing everything we can to ensure that you get a quality product that's going to work and last for the lifetime of the scope. If you ever do have a problem, though, we have the capabilities to repair or replace whatever we need to do.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you.
So there you go. That's the Leupold Mark V HD and why it's such a great optic for the series. The beauty of the scope is that while it's by no means a cheap optic, you're getting vast majority of the features and benefits of scopes at nearly twice the price. If you liked the video, make sure to share it with your friends, hit the like button, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to help the channel out, and by all means I do need it, you can support us on Patreon. Here I am at the range, I'm trying to shoot these guns, and I decide to shoot the chrono. Now granted, this one was already there from a while ago, so I'm not cheating on that one, but I popped a very nice 308 round right into the support. Oh well. But if you want to help the channel and become a patron, I want to get one of those fancy lab radars. I really, really do. It's going to help the channel. Yes? Please do. So there you go, guys. I'm always appreciative of everyone watching, and I'll see you next time. All of this is why many shooters just, all of this is why many shooters,